Hi, everyone. Take two. Hi, Jen.
Hey.
Thanks, Dave. Welcome to our Roofless in Colloquium. We're going to do a presentation about flesh stones. It's going to be amazing and fantastic and incredible and way overdue. Um, 30 minutes, and then we're going to open the microphones. We are going to do something different this time. A lot of people are interested in these presentations, and we never put them out, but what we're going to do is we're just going to record them, and then we're just going to put them for sale. You guys are amazing, and you get it for free because you were in the webinar last week. So if anyone comes knocking, we'll tell them, okay, just here it is, buy it. Anyhow, I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's the other way around. Zoom is not super smart, so it's okay. So plug in the t-shirts. We crank out one every week, and this week's t-shirt is problem solvent. And so we're offering long sleeve. We're doing all kinds of things. Sort of like rub the belly, tap the head. Selling merchandise. That's yeah. So anyhow, flash stones. And I'm just gonna spotlight the video, and I just prepped them. So this is really. It's going to be a very important session because I want to talk about a bunch of things. Every single artist has their own formula for doing flesh tones. That's why you're never going to find a book or a guru or a teacher that's just going to nail it down. And not only that, but some people use a bunch of colors to make flesh tones. So over the years, we try to simplify and come up with a very simple formula or formulas in order to create a basic color for flesh tones. Flesh tones, the presentation that I'm going to do right now, or any presentation, flesh tones are consider the tones on any skin with any light condition. I don't have to say this, but any ethnicity and any variation of skin color. So any color that you use on a palette for a skin tone should allow you to paint any shade of skin. There's not such a thing as one formula for dark and one formula for light. The colors on the palette that we use for skin tones can be applied or mixed to create any shade. We're going to do a little bit of experimentation with basic formulas. We're going to do darker, lighter, third notes with green and purple, and tints especially. And I forgot to bring a gray, so I'm just going to bring it. But skin tones could be generalized, because I think that's what people really want to know, into sort of like desaturated orange spectrum. So if we were to generalize what the color would be for skin tones in a very broad sense, it would be an orangey note that it's low in chroma. Low in chroma means not very, very saturated. So within that generalization, you could have things that are warmer, colder, lighter, the light direction, the shadows are important to consider, outdoor lighting, artificial lighting, daytime, nighttime, candlelight, studio light, flashlight. Every single condition will create a different color. So that's why it's so difficult to explain, it's so difficult to memorize. But what we're going to do here, it's something that I've never seen before in any of the demonstrations that I've attended or seen. It's simplify the combination so you get the basics of a basic skin tone, and then how to expand from there. So most of the tutorials that we've seen, you get a bunch of colors that are hard to pronounce, and then people create a scale from darker to lighter, which is fine, but we're gonna do something different. I'm gonna introduce the colors, and then from more important to least important. So this palette is organized by the order of how important the colors are. The most important color on any, personally, on any skin tone is the raw umber. So the period, that's it. The second most important in our palette, it's the ecru. So in order to create tints, we rely more on ecru than on white titanium white. The third most important in our palette would be the raw umber. Then we got to this, we get to this like radiant red from Gamblin, which is like a paint tone, and we could use to infuse some warmth. And then our neutral yellow, yellow ochre could be also introduced to create or tarnish any mud colors. So for us, these are the most important colors: burnt sienna, ecru, otherwise called, AKA titanium buff, raw umber, radiant red, yellow ochre. What are these colors right here? These are colors that we can add if we feel we need to create variations of skin tones. We brought one black here, a warm black, Van Dyke brown. It's a color that we recently incorporated, and we use it a lot. Van Dyke brown is a darker version of raw umber. So it makes sense to have this instead of Payne's gray, just because we want to have maybe a darker note to create dark skin. Ultramarine blue, because skin tones are essentially muddy tones. So in order to create something muddy, when you have reds or reddish notes, you need to counterbalance it with something cold. So French ultramarine can create muddy notes that could help us in expanding the range of flesh tones. And then our favorite tones for third notes. On any portrait or any skin, when you build your tones, there are going to be areas that are not necessarily going to be muddy or brownish or orange-like. There are areas where there's some capillaries, so the areas are warmer in color, more rouge or pinky. And there are areas where the light's not going to be direct and it creates greenish cast shadows. So that's why it's important to bring a purple and a green. So we're going to go into detail, but the purple that we have here, it's quinacridone magenta. I think that's a color that actually quinacridone violet. Violet. Quinacridones are purpley notes, or a range of purple notes, and the quinacridone violet is a color that we also incorporated. And then viridian green, sort of like a cold green without too much yellow, because that could just give us some cast shadows with that greenish look. We also incorporated radiant blue. It's like a light blue that we use a lot to create, cool notes. And then I just didn't bring it, but I'm gonna squeeze it right now. I'm just gonna bring gray, a Portland gray medium. I have my colors organized in Ziplocs, so then I don't have to spend too much time finding the colors. So yeah, white gray, there's a lot of gray on skin notes that depends on the light, not directly reflecting on the skin. So gray, it's an awesome paint or color to desaturate, to soften, and to create more neutral areas. All right, so I'm just gonna leave it right here. I'm gonna start mixing. Painting skin is not about color matching. It's about identifying the how the light quality in the scene reflects on the skin. So it's about range, it's about spectrum, and it's about value. So it's not about making one formula and then applying it everywhere. We need to create illusion of cylindric areas, bone structure. So you have to consider value more than color. So forget about color matching so much and incorporate more the idea of value and light quality. Um, Another great note and exercise and thing that you could do when museums reopen or galleries reopen, every time you go to a museum and you see a painting that features a portrait, try to do this experiment um, with a safe distance, compare your skin against the skin of the portrait. Why? Because it's amazing when we see a portrait, we think like it's highly realistic, but it's amazing how radically different and unnatural the skin, the painted skin, actually is. We make decisions by association, so it's important to break that pattern of thinking of color that way by putting your skin not obviously on top of the painting because you would probably get arrested, but as close as you can, and then compare the skin, your skin, to different parts of the skin on the portrait. Yeah, so let's kind of like do it. I just need a brush and I have a solvent. I'm going to use the same brush. So the first thing that I'm going to do, since I said this is the most important, I'm going to use a gray tone underneath. So you're going to see the contrast between a gray paper. So this is burnt sienna, and it's pretty high chroma, pretty orange-like, really brown. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of the transparency. And the first simple formula for skin for us is to combine this with ecru. So I'm just gonna bring some of this and a little bit of ecru, and I'm just gonna put it right here. The tube had a lot of oil, so that's why this ecru is a little. So is this skin tone, it's not really accurate skin tone, but it could be a good base to start from. It's very orange and red, but still, I mean, depending on what combination you get, this could be a good start to do either a wash or first notes in certain areas. So we highly recommend to simplify the formulas when you paint, because the more colors you add, the less clarity you're going to have, and it's much harder to remember what kind of formula you use. So start simple, 2, 3, 4 colors, that's it. For skin tone, these two are excellent combinations. Now, if you want something a little bit darker, then you just bring the raw umber, and then you can just mix the raw umber with the combination that you had, and you can have variations of that skin tone using those 3 colors. So for us, these 3 tones are really important if you want to create super basic skin tones that range from a little bit lighter to a little bit darker. Of course, if you want to lighten up this color, use titanium white, and then you're going to get something that has more of a lighter tone. So this could be a really, really simple, basic base to play with basic skin tones. Raw umber, ecru, and burnt sienna, raw umber, and burnt sienna, ecru, and raw umber. So I'm going to make things a little bit more complicated later, adding some blue. And as I said before, if you want to counterbalance the orange of certain tones, you need something really cold to create more of a muddier tone. But we're not there yet. I just wanted to give you a range of what the burnt sienna looks like compared with or adding it a little bit of ecru and creating sort of like a base, a tan dark base. What's our third best color to add on skin tones? Well, for us, it's the red, radiant red. In fact, I could create another basic skin tone that we do all the time by mixing burnt sienna and radiant red. It's kind of like light pink. This is obviously too pink to look like a natural, some kind of like natural skin tone. But if you bring this fundamental tone right here, you could create something also very basic. Now, if you want to darken it, a little bit of the raw umber, and you could bring or create something a little bit darker that has more of a skin tone base, although it's very red. But as a base, I think this could work, and that's what we use when we start our layering. With skin tones, you always have to manipulate and adjust as you move forward. So there's always going to be an addition later of extra tones the more you work on the painting. But at least at the beginning, we want to set up a base that's simple to remember, easy, with very few combination of colors. So again, if you want to discover what the color actually looks like, you can always bring a little bit of titanium white and find out what this color would look like on a tint. So this could be, if you think it's too pink, you bring a little bit more of the burnt sienna. And if you think it's too red, so then you can bring a little bit of the raw umber. So this is actually a much better, much more elevated stage or combination of simple colors to create a basic skin tone that would go from lighter and then to darker, a little bit darker with the raw umber. So even with models or portraits or skin that is dark, dark skin doesn't mean that you're going to have to use black all the time, because the light bouncing on the dark skin is going to create light notes, very light, very pale, depending on the light reflection. The same happens with light skin. We think light skin has to have like one certain value, but in fact, the shadow of the light skin may contain some super dark notes. So you've got to create a range from darker to lighter, regardless of the skin color of the person or the figure, because each figure will have a range from darker to lighter no matter what. If the person has like a darker skin, there's going to be obviously much more areas with slightly darker notes, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to paint lighter areas there. You will. So it just depends on the light, obviously. If it's daytime or studio light, certainly that's more likely to happen. If it's penumbra, darkness, shadows, then you won't be able to use this, obviously. Anyhow, so let me see if I can just go to the next stage. So I would say these are the four more important colors. Simple combination, these two, and they'll get you going. They'll create something tan-like, muddy, and orange-based. Darker element on both combinations, always the raw umber. That's what we use. And if you want something a little bit more sophisticated or a step up, then you bring the red, radiant red as a warming tone. Why the yellow ochre? The yellow ochre is a very sensitive color, or a color that we don't use that much because it's very strong. So for us, the yellow ochre could be a darker version of the ecru. So for example, if I just bring here burnt sienna and ecru, I create something that's orangey-like, but the chroma, which means the pigmentation, is way, way too high. So can I create something skin-like with some titanium white? I could. I think this is still very on the yellow side, so perhaps some raw umber could tone it down. But I think the best idea here, or the best option, would be, in order to cool things down, we could add a tiny bit of blue. So I'm going to the next level here in regards of complexity, because you're going to see a lot of palettes where the blue is present, rightfully so. The reason why it's present, it's because it's such a great muddying color. And with skin, we want mud. We want mud as much as possible. We can always make warm mud or cold mud, but in the end, you know, this is a great note to pull things back if they're too reddish, if they're too yellowish or too orange-like. So the next color in importance, and I'm skipping this because I think I'm just gonna talk about it later, but the next color in importance is blue, I would say, ultramarine blue. So I'll give you an example. I'm gonna make skin color right now with, again, our favorite base tone, which is burnt sienna and a tiny bit of blue. So this combination can give you an excellent skin tone base. You would still have to create a tint, or maybe just change the temperature with more of a reddish note or more of an ecru to soften it. But this could be a great base. So again, the next level, we talked about these two together. We talk about these two together and using this as a darkening note. And now what I'm doing is I'm doing the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue to create a muddy note that could be more on the skin, yeah, or more necessaries depending on what kind of like skin you or area you're doing. So what happens with Van Dyke Brown? So the Van Dyke Brown, it's an excellent darkening color. If you have to do something super dark, let's say eyebrows or hair or areas on the skin where the light is so strong that, for example, if you're wearing a t-shirt or some fabric on top and it creates a cast shadow, you can always bring or create a neutral tone or a skin tone. And I'm using right now raw umber, I'm sorry, I keep confusing the names, burnt sienna and blue. And you create a tone that's sort of like ashy brown, but you want something much darker, and you want to make it a little bit more darker than raw umber. You can always bring, whoops, I think that's good, yeah. You can always bring Van Dyke Brown, not as important, but Van Dyke Brown could give you very, very dark notes. More like this. This is a little bit too blue, but if you just bring a little bit more of the reddish tone of the burnt sienna, this could be an excellent, extremely dark tone for skin. We love the Van Dyke Brown. It's a warm brown. It was it's a warm black. I'm sorry. It was a favorite, one of the Rembrandt's favorite blacks. Velasquez, I'm sorry, favorite blacks. It has a great neutral tone, and it's really low in value. So it could be great to create darker shadow notes. You could have your hand on top of a table. This could be, I don't know, you're leaning against a piece of fabric. We're creating these shades not because this is about ethnicity. This is a shadow that you may need if you have someone with very pale skin with a certain light condition or a certain cast shadow, or perhaps an area on the hair that you really need to darken. So I think it's very important to understand that associating skin color with ethnicity, you will lose potentially or a lot of potential in creating a wider range. Always look or think skin color in regards of how dark and how light, regardless of the figure. That really doesn't matter. So finally, oh, by the way, I haven't gone with the rest, but yeah, let's kind of like go over the other two colors. So again, what I did right here is incorporated blue in order to pull back the redness of the burnt sienna, and then also incorporate the Van Dyke Brown in order to create darker, more ashy notes. I would say this is the least important of all the colors that we introduced so far, the Van Dyke Brown. So I've seen people using just the three primary colors and black and white. Blue, yellow, red, and then black and white. You can create skin tones with those also, because these neutral tones right here are a combination of different amounts of red, uh, um, blue, and yellow. So you can create browns with the three primaries and then use a white and a black to darken or lighten. There are many roads and paths that can take you to a skin color, but it just depends on what the figure looks like and the light conditions. So that's why this is kind of like very generalized. So why these two? Why a purple and why a green? There are certain parts of the skin where the capillaries are closer to the skin and it creates this warmth, or it's not really warmth because warmth would be more orangey, but this, I call it rouge. It's not more orange. There is a purpley note, and it's because of the capillaries and the blood vessels that are closer to the surface of the skin. Um, and you'll see this in many portraits. I just brought two examples that I'm going to show later, but yes. And then why green? Because sometimes, I don't know if you can even tell with my, I'm just going to switch. I'm going to switch, but sometimes maybe not here, but maybe here. So what happens when skin gets uh, not direct light, you may have like a cast that may look a little bit greenish. And it's because the absence of light and the shadow, instead of looking dark gray, it just creates a cool version of that skin. So it happens in every phase, and I would say under pretty much every light condition. But it's important to have the green in case you want to take the portrait to the next level. So these two right here are only when you have done a few sessions creating lights and darks with skin notes, and you want to go to the next level and create warmth and a tarnished shadow. So let's go back to a very basic skin tone. I'm just going to use burnt sienna and a small amount of blue. It's possibly too much blue, but it's okay. And then I'm just going to create a tint. So this is a fast way to create a skin tone. Fast. The least amount of paint, the better. I don't like to bring reds, for example. That's my personal approach. And I don't like to bring yellows. That's also my personal approach. Now, I invite you to go online and type how to make flesh tones in oil. And you're gonna get a bunch of palettes with a lot of colors, and all of them will have red and yellow. I just think that they're not necessary because they have a lot of muddy notes. And the reason why I don't like to have them, it's because they complicate things. The more options I have, the more I lose control of the mixture. So I like to keep it simple. I can get something really good with very basic stuff like this right here. So if you want to create, I'm making a darker note. I'll do the same with a lighter note because these are all very brown, but I just have to amp up the value. So a little bit of the quinacridone right here will give you something that may have a tad more rouge. So third notes are not about adding new colors. They are about changing the glow of the colors that we already have. So we don't want something that reads purple on the skin. Whoops, that's not really great. Something is happening. Okay, sorry about this. But yeah, so that this could be a good color to add nose, the cheeks, for example. And I'm just gonna bring a tint of that and see if we can see something much lighter. Yeah, that could be a great note. So this ashy, again, pale tint of skin color with a little bit of the quinacridone can give us a little bit of rouge without making it too intense. The more red we see on the skin, the more of the rouge I would recommend to add. Um, so yeah, I think that could be a good note. Let me just see if I can do the cast green, and maybe I'll do, let's see if I can do a little bit of this rouge with this note right here. Yeah, and a little bit of white. So this could be also an interesting color to add for a slightly warmer areas of the skin. The saturation is key. There's a lot of gray on a natural looking skin. It's not highly saturated. We paint faces with way too much color. So anything that becomes ashy and toned down, it's good. You can always increase that saturation if you need to with any of the colors right here on the extreme. The burnt sienna, the yellow ochre, you can always bring it up. But I like to stay within that sort of like range. And then I'm just going to show you, I'm going to make another different skin tone right here. This already has some of the purple. And I'm going to use the radiant red. Another skin tone right here. It's really warm, but I think that could work. And then a tiny bit of the Viridian green added on that area. So the Viridian green will slightly darken a little bit of the color, a little bit. It's not going to look green on the face overall. No one will identify this as green, but it's just darker enough to create the idea of absence of light. So again, in areas of the neck or recessed areas, even under the eyebrows or under the bottom of the eye, sometimes this could be a good addition if we want to create something slightly darker that pulls back from warmth, tan looking muddy skin. So let me see if I can do it with a darker color, a little bit, not too much. And I'm just gonna bring it on this tone right here. So I would say this, it just, it pulls the muddiness and it takes it more to a gray area. It feels a little bit cooler. So this could be a good addition to certain parts of the face. It's never, I would not mix the green with tints or lighter notes. I don't think that is specifically featured in parts of the skin that would take like above the eyebrow, for example, or the bridge of the nose. It's usually in parts of the skin where there's absence of light. The same way applies to the quinacridone violet, but in reverse. I don't think I would put quinacridone violet or a purplish note on shaded areas of the skin, like on the neck, unless it's something that's visible. I would keep them in areas maybe even on the lips, which is sort of like a different version of the skin, because the skin on the lips is much thinner. So that's why our lips are quote unquote red. The capillaries on the lips are closer to the surface of the skin, and we see something a little bit more rouge. So the skin on the lips is not necessarily too far away from the skin of our face. It's just a little bit warmer or more rouge. I keep saying that word. I think it applies. So I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to keep this really brown because I wanted to show you how easy it is to make a base. And then from that base, we can always create tints to create lighter, paler skin tones. So there's always that option. As we know, titanium white, it's really strong, so it can really white out the skin effect. But if you want to create a lighter version of that muddy tone, muddy ashy tone, you can always bring a little bit of that on your mixture, and you can create really pale notes. If you think this is too ashy and you want to make it a little bit more purpley like, or bring a little bit of warmth on the skin, you can always use the radiant red, and that's a great color to incorporate, to give that sense of more of a pinky skin. Um, so, and why the blue? We haven't used the blue and the gray. Let me just see if we can incorporate it. Most of the time, we find ourselves doing this: a little bit of the pink and a little bit of the blue, the light blue mixed together. Why? Just the combination of both give us this sort of like violet lavender look that could be a great addition to highlights on the skin. Sometimes there are areas that there's a bone structure and there's a little bit of like more of a skin tone above or below. We could just bring this color as a natural highlight on top. So that's the reason why I like this blue on the palette when I create skin tones, just because it provides coolness on a lighter area. Would it work on any of the tones, on the skin tones that we made? Maybe, maybe not, but we're just gonna give it a try. That I've never tried before. So bringing, yeah, just makes it a little bit more gray. Perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea in certain spots, but it's more gray because we are counterbalancing the warmth of the burnt sienna. So this could actually, this is something new that I think I'm gonna add this to my discovery, let's see if I can finish the sentence properly. Every time we do these presentations, we find out something new. That's why these presentations are so crucial, because we don't have the time to experiment when we have a subject that we have to paint. There's literally so much going on that we don't have the time to explore and experiment. Color mixing is the #1 question everyone wants to know about, and we never have time to do it. So that's why this is so crucial and fundamental, not only for anyone watching, but for us as well, because what we did was incorporate, remember that I did a skin tone with burnt sienna and blue. So what I did was bring the burnt sienna and a lighter blue and see what I got. And I got a color that I could likely use in any, this is probably a little bit too bluish. Sometimes I do this. I would still have to tweak it, but it would be a great color to add as a base or as a lighter note in certain areas. So gray, final color. Why gray? So sometimes all it takes is to create a warm note. Let's say I'm just going to use this, and gray, to bring a skin tone that I may use in a not super saturated area. So don't underestimate the importance of gray paint when you make skin tones, because there are a lot of areas that don't have light directly reflecting on them, that they're highly desaturated, or I would say they're mostly desaturated. So gray directly with a muddy note can give you that skin tone. Maybe this one, it's a little bit too yellow, so I would possibly use the deeper note to warm it up. But still, bringing some gray, this could be applied somewhere. Bringing some gray to your skin notes. Let's see if I can just bring some gray right here also. I have a lot of yellow ochre. Maybe the black and the gray, the warm black. Yeah, that could be a, believe it or not, there are certain areas on the face or on the skin or armpit, something flexing, um, leaning against a wall or a surface, that may read completely gray. And all you need is a combination of a muddy note with gray. Yeah, I think so. So I hope this wasn't too confusing. To recap really quickly, um, main combination, definitely main color for skin tone. We use it everywhere. So I would just bring that. Burnt sienna. This is a good combination to do something quick and fast and create variations. Second fast combination would be these two right here. And then you can always use the yellow ochre to create a tarnished version depending on the skin note. Blue is the most important after all this, just because sometimes you want to counterbalance the warmth. And the blue does it, create something a little bit more ashy. If you want to increase the darkness because there's either dark skin or there's either pale skin with a dark shadow, you can always use the Van Dyke brown, and then a purple and a green to create rouge areas if you need to, and then tarnished shadows where the light doesn't get to. Finally, the light blue, it's a good color to add for highlights in certain areas, combined with the um, radiant red. And gray. Gray, have it always, because sometimes the faces that we do are super colorful and just may be too saturated, and then gray immediately pulls it down. So before I stop this and then um, I go over feedback and I stop the recording, what I'll do is I'll just share one screen. I just brought two elements, one screen, enough of Monet. Yeah, that's plenty for a couple of weeks. So let's go back to Berthe Morisot. This is the famous self-portrait that she did. And I just want to let you know that skin tone, at the end of the day, it's something that's very personal. And the most important thing is not really matching the color. And look what happens here. None of the colors on her skin or on the skin of the portrait feels really natural. There's a high, like lavender tone right here. She added red. And then there's this lemon yellow on the highlights. Look at the red added on the skin. So matching the color, it's not the number one priority, but creating an illusion of form, highs and lows, and temperature is. None of the colors on my palette match here. She didn't try to make something realistic. She tried to make something that had an effect, a light effect. So consider that, because it's not a matter of going nuts and finding out something that exactly matches the skin. Variety, range, the wider spectrum, the better. Consider value and temperature, and you'll be fine. And then I think there's something, yeah, this is an actor, a Shakespearean actor in the 18th century. And the portrait, what was his name again? Ira Aldrich. And the painting is by William Mulready. Mulready, yes. He was painted as Othello. So I just wanted to bring an example of darker skin painted in the 18th century, because I mean, I said enough of Monet, but enough also of a tiny spectrum of skin color. There were, although not as predominant, but there were a lot of paintings done in the 1800s. I'm sorry, I keep saying 18th century. 1800s and also early 20th century, of people with much darker skin. So even with this example of darker notes with certainly burnt sienna in them and Van Dyke brown, there are still areas of the skin that may have a little bit of a lighter tone. So there's definitely the idea of rouge in certain spots, and I could dare to say there's some green cast in some notes. But yeah, I just wanted to bring an example of what a painting from the 1800s of a person with darker skin note would look like, because they exist. All right, so this concludes the presentation, and I'm just gonna stop, let me see, stop sharing, and hold on one second, stop recording. I'm gonna pause the record. Yeah, stop recording. Yeah, I'll pause it.